Gabby. Welcome to my channel. And today I want to talk about some things. So let's go. Next character, Grayson. That is technically not her first name, that is her last name. I haven't yet to come up with a first name for her. I should, but most of through the novel I made her go by her last name, which is Grayson. She even introduced herself as that by that name, her last name. Anyway, about her. But before I talk about her, I need to talk about Indian and Japanese fashion in the 1940s. Yes, unlike before, this is more prevalent, and I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. Do not hold me to that. Okay. So, compared to like Friends, oh yeah, by the way, I was just going to do France, but I decided to do India because India and Japan, well, I originally was going to do Japan, but I was going to do France instead of India, but I decided to change to India because I decided that, well, I'll talk about later. But anyway, Indian fashion. um, there was very little I could find about Indian fashion, at least in English. Compared to Japanese, I could at least read and understand Japanese to a degree. I cannot understand or read any dialect, Indian dialect. So my research was very limited, but from what I found, okay, there was a traditional clothing that was going through a well, sorry, not traditional clothing, wrong wording. um, Compared to the rest of the world, where most of the world was fighting the war, World War II, India was also fighting it, but there was another movement going on called the Freedom Movement. India was having its freedom movement, and that was affecting the fashion. For example, their sari, they wear it any way they want, and it doesn't matter. There was not a regulated way to wear sari. Wear however you want. So that's one thing. Another thing that became popular, it was the salwar kameez. Please excuse my pronunciation for going on. It wasn't, the reason wasn't specified, but it was very popular. It is usually a traditional wear, and I guess it just came back in fashion because of the freedom movement. And the salwar kameez is pretty much the trousers. It is wide at the waist, narrow at the cuff bottom, and then there is a drawstring or elastic belt which help become plaited around the waist. The trousers can be wide and baggy, or they can be quite narrow. The kameez is a long shirt or tunic. The side of the seams are left open below the waistline, which gives the wearer a freedom of movement. The kameez is usually cut straight and flat. Older kameez are traditional cut. Modern kameez are more like have a European inspired set in sleeves. The kameez may have a European style collar or a modern collar, or it may just be completely collarless. Not colorless, collar. It is designed as a women's garment and similar to kurata, the colorless one. Okay. Another thing that was popular was the zari, gota, and sequins. They were embellished, like the Salma kawamis was embellished in gata, gota, and sequins. There's also the kahari were made of handspin instead of made by British mills. So yeah. And the men's fashion was inspired by European fashion. So that will also come up later and is very quite important. So this one is not as much prevalent, but I do try to include it in some of my fashion looks, and you will see when I get to it. Okay, so again, not much was found in 1940s fashion, but I did try to look in Japanese to see what was popular. So here we go. This is my very limited research on Japanese fashion. Women was still wearing kimonos around the pretty much 1930s, still wearing it. However, Western fashion was becoming popular, especially among children and female students. So like these were usually worn inside the house. They were very rarely worn outside, especially among those 10 years of older and 10 years and up. Yeah, 10 years and older. Same thing. Married women started to wear them outside the home more frequently. After marriage, they switched back to wearing kimonos. During the war, it was popular to wear patriotic kimonos, So, like fireplanes and so on. How the Japanese made work clothes become harder to come by, so, Western clothes became more popular or more important because, it was more available and easier to wear and, I guess, made compared to the kimonos. This is just speculation. This is not research in that part. Okay, this one's research. Therefore, clothing like the monpi, please excuse my pronunciation, hyojun fuku, which means standard clothing, basically is a state mandated uniforms, is similar to the utility clothing done in America and Europe. Were worn more regularly, to be precise. It was very hard to come by. Women were forced to do various labors, so uniforms were more popular to wear, and the uniforms were basically monpi. Plus, it was easier to move around in. Those who had economic mean could have their clothes made by department stores or Western clothing stores. Those who didn't sold their clothes by themselves. Again, similar way how everything just wraps up the whole world because World War. Anyway, so now that that's wrapped up, I could talk about Grayson. And by the way, this also prevalent to the last character I'm going to talk about in this lineup, but we're going to get to that when I get to that. So, well, most of the fashion here was taken from Indian, kind of, but also because Indian men specifically. Because if I had to pick a cliche, break down again, Grayson as a cliche, she is the tough tomboy. That is her cliche when I after like drawn her out, and when I first originally drew her character, her clothing did not change much from when I first initially drew her just to sketch her out to get a feel of her, to now. It remains pretty much the same or similar. Because the reason being, again, she's 14 years old. The reason being, she trusts the way she is to not only fit in with her community. By the way, Grayson, unlike the rest of the everyone else on this list, including the last character, are all part of the upper mountain. She is the only character on this lineup who is from the bottom of the mountain. She is a working class. Hence why why I decided to make it Indian Japanese inspiration, because she is those who are from the upper mountain would have inspiration taken from Europe and America, while those from the bottom will have the inspiration taken from other places around the world, specifically India and Japan. Why? Because. So, I would also do Africa, but very little to nothing was found in Africa. So, very hard to come by. Going back to my original statement, I did take one thing from Africa, which is the pattern. I forgot what the pattern is called. But it's a pattern which is based on animals and stuff, like how it's sketched on fabric, but it's on her shoes. And also, the wooden shoes also came from European inspiration because she's from the lower and bottom mountains, she cannot afford the leather nice shoes, or she's not allowed to be given leather nice shoes because, again, limited resources. So those in the mountains get the best resources, while those in the bottom, not the best resources. So her shoes are wooden shoes. Now going back to what I was talking about, her, because she wanted to blend in with both the upper and bottom mountain. The reason being, there is a plot in, kind of as a plot thing, motivation she has is to sneak in because of, again, limited resources. They also get limited food, and the food that they get is not as great as those from the top of the mountain. So what she does is, having the clothes she has or picking the clothes she wears, she could sneak up into the upper mountain to gather food and then hidden in the dark where they least throw out the food. Where they threw out food, she could just get the food and eat that. And which is why the thing is, also those who live in the bottom is known as bottom feeders, so it doesn't help her image that she's literally eating their leftovers that they threw away. Doesn't help. But yeah, but it's still, even though it's thrown out leftovers, the leftovers they have is still much better than what they serve from the bottom of, they usually serve them who live in the bottom of the mountain. I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to be in order because I'm just coming from the heart or something like that, basically. I had this plan in mind, but when I'm speaking it is not coming out as clear. I should say that. That's how I'm trying to say. Okay, so her dress is similar, somewhat colorless, kind of like how the Kamamis would be. It's colorless, collarless, but she has a band where she could gather sweat when she's working. And she does at night because it's during the day, because she lives in the bottom, is not as cold as those who live on the top. She usually doesn't have a poncho, but if she does, it'll be kind of like similar to Carol's, where it's like a cape like, but instead of made out of suede soft leather, it is made out of wool and is only worn during the night. And she has a band or around her waist. Unlike the camis, it's not as long as the camis. Instead, it's more worn like a shirt that the upper class wear. Hence, why is the cut it is. And her pants would be, if she was wearing the pants, if it wasn't rolled up, because it's rolled up because when she's working, she rolls it up. It would be somewhat more cane. It would be like the Salma, but it will be somewhat similar in the fashion or taste as the upper class, in a similar cut, but not as narrow at the bottom, I should say. So that's Grayson. That's her fashion. That's why I chose the things I chose for her, and that's how she came to look. Also, it is more common to wear, rather than have like flower patterns, the patterns on the bottom are more geometric or based on nature, hence why her shoes has like llamas. It's like carved llama with hair, coming from like fashion. Again, African inspiration. That's the only little inspiration I could get from Africa, is using the patterns. Her shirt is very simple though. Her shirt pattern is just lines, and again, I guess to blend in, if she doesn't have like obvious patterns that the rest of her community is wearing. At least not on her shirt, on her top. I was thinking of giving her a headdress, like a cloth you put around her head and you wrap it and it's like tied with the cloth, similar cloth that she has around her neck, but on her head. But I decided to nix it, at least for this design. Lastly, the thing about her design I want to mention is, what did I want to mention? Oh, her fabric is all made out of secondhand, but third hand used fiber, leaf fiber fabric. Because after the kids grew out of it, they handed down to those who live in the bottom, and the bottom like reuse that, but they reuse in a way they can remake their own patterns and stuff like that. So that's why I said they were able to make their own patterns, but in a more creative way. She somehow got slipped by and be able to have the most simple pattern of everyone in the community, despite the reuse of the pattern. Most likely she has Cerebes, if that's the case. Sure. So yeah, that is it for Grayson. Oh, and unlike the rest of them, from top to bottom, everything is made out of, except for her shoes, is made out of fiber. Banana leaf fiber. So there you go. That is Grayson. Now, moving on to the very last character of the lineup. Here we are at the very last character, at least for this lineup, Trajar. Before I go into detail or even talk about her, I want to briefly mention and talk about how the bottom people, those from the bottom of the mountain, are those who originally originated from like places like Africa, indigenous. As I was saying, a lot of them from the bottom of the mountain originated from places like Africa, indigenous. And yeah, that was all it. But although I took a lot of inspiration from India and Japan, maybe possibly there are from people from India and Japan, but I mostly concentrated on just indigenous in Africa, and of course European, from Europe. Those are where they originated from, and those from the bottom, especially from the bottom, integrated a lot to the point where it is like mixed. The whole population is mixed, but they count as one similar same race, because it's like years again completely cut off the rest of the world, and it's just them. And the top there doesn't really blend in with the bottom. And although I say European, most of the top is European, and it's much easier in the way I've structured or thought of the world building. It's much easier for those from the top to be demoted to the bottom than it is for those from the bottom to promote it to the top. And in this case, Traja and her family is one of those. During the chosen ceremony, she was chosen. She was one of the chosen ones. Therefore, her, from their religion, by the way, her and her family was able to move up the mountains, but they all still had the mentality at the bottom of the mountain. And Charger was raised with that kind of mentality, although not on purpose. It's just something that was beaten into them, that they just have it, and not also those around her, how those around her reflected her. So when designing Charger, she if I'm going to, okay, break it down to a cliche like I did with the rest of the characters. She is the princess. She is an actual princess, but dressed as a pauper or a villager. If it makes sense. So, as I said, she is one of the chosen ones. That's why she's got promoted. However, no one treated her as a chosen one. At least those on the top part of the mountain don't see her like that too much. So therefore, she doesn't get the respect for her authority, or the authority that goes with her structure, her status. And so she instead carries a lot of the tradition and therefore dressed more like those from the bottom of the mountains. That also reflected from her parents, as was her parents who made her clothes. Particularly her mother when she was alive, and now she makes her own clothes. And she still continued to carry the tradition and reflection. And unlike Carol, I'm sorry, I forgot her name for a second. Unlike Carol, who is more slightly more dressed more, who also dressed maturely a bit. She still has more of a little bit of girlish in some parts of her, while Traja is more completely mature, I think. Also, when I was also designing her, like others, like Grayson, who I was supposed to make the cape for, I definitely had to make sure to do this for Traja. Compared to everyone's cloak, hers completely cover her clothing, so you, almost like Cerebi, but Cerebi could still see some bits of it. So you can still see the collar and the part of his shirt you can see is like a regular shirt. You cannot really do that with Traja's cloak or poncho, whatever you want to call it. It fully covers her head and wraps around. So I made sure to cover it separately, but now she looks like a floating ghost next to Traja. And she looks a bit more mature and swollen in face. But yeah, but I like it still, so I left it. So many going to more breakdown into Charger. As I said, she has her reflection of her parents' heritage, of that they came from the bottom of the mountain. But not only that, they although she carries their tradition, her materials, due to her parents, because they are promoted up, they are, even though they are not well received by most, they still will receive good, decent materials, just a little bit less than the average family. And so the family will take the parents will take the used or secondhand materials from make their clothes, and make their child clothes in better material. Just because that is their pride and joy. She is technically the reason why they get the promotion, why they get the better lifestyle. So they will give her the better materials. Even up to now, she will still get the better materials. So unlike, let's say, Carol, who have some of her clothing at this point, some of her clothing are still new. Most of them are still created, are secondhand material. Where Traja is completely, and this is where the envy or one-sided rivalry comes into place with Traja and Carol, because Carol wants to be a princess, while Traja technically is. And once again, rolling in with that inspiration, I did take some inspiration where she is wearing a sari, but like there is, although she is restricted and reserved and she takes whatever is given to her, there is a part of her that is fighting back, or at least wants to fight back, hence the reason why she wears the sari freely, however she feels like. In this case, she wrapped it around her chest and wrapped it around her waist. Taking inspiration from 1940s 40 Indian fashion. Also, I decided to give her head wrap. When I was drawing her a year younger, she was still wearing, I did want to draw her with a headband, head coverage, but when I drew her, it was originally like those like nuns, the covering your head like the nuns wear. But instead, I decided to change it to the head wrap. And then, although I wasn't able to find a lot of inspiration or information about fashion in the 1940s Africa, there were a few images that I was able to find off the internet, particularly on Pinterest, which is where the pants came from. Is a mixture of the monpe. By the way, I also want to talk about that. I almost forgot. If I actually didn't realize I was pronouncing it wrong until I went to look it up, research it to look for more references again for Trajar, and I found out that yeah, I was pronouncing wrong. It's not monpe. Mope is monpe. Monpe. So apologies for that I was pronouncing it wrong. So here we go. Monpe. She is wearing somewhat like a monpe pants, but with African patterns. She does have leather shoes, brand new nice leather shoes, and her clothing is mostly made of silk, and the parts that are made of silk is made out of fresh, brand new leaf fiber fabric. So her head wrap, her shirt is made out of the leaf fiber. Her sari and her pants is made out of silk, and she's the only other character on this list in this lineup that is wearing silk. So you kind of get the idea of how her status is, again with Sarabi, who is also very high status. And then lastly, she's wearing leather shoes, similar to Sarabi, but also Carol. And although Marius also technically has leather shoes, his is secondhand, and the only one who's wearing wooden is Grayson. And her, of course, her cloak or poncho, whatever you want to call it, it is made out of wool. I was considering made out of silk, but I don't think silk would be as warm as she would need to be living on top of the mountain. So it is made out of wool. So there you go. So that is Trajar, and this is my lineup for now. There is 2 more characters in this particular book, but I only concentrate on those that comes in in terms of the timeline. As how to explain this? Okay, so in terms of the timeline, these are the only characters that appeared right now. There will be 2 more characters, main characters I want to add later on, but this is it for now. So here is to wrap up my lineup, my very first lineup. Also, you can get, as I'm writing and rewriting the story, I did find changes or little tweaks I want to change into the characters as I figure out their motivation or reevaluate their motivation. So one of them would be definitely a little bit of Carol. I give her an additional motive besides the one she already has. I also want to change Sarabi, not only in his motivation but how he's treated, because I feel like he was treated too good. So yeah, I feel like he was treated too good. So yeah, I'm changing. Trajar, I already kind of changed her as I went along, but I still kept her clothing because I still fit. But I did, as I said, the part where I added was like how she's had a bit of a fighting. She's very has a bit of fighting spirit, but it's so suppressed that she doesn't even she feels apologetic for her fighting. So yeah, so that's where I was thinking of Trajar, and that's why she's so wrapped up, unlike all the other characters who are slightly more exposed. I decided to keep Marius the way he is. I just like his character is well thought of to me. Grayson is also somewhat thought out, but I think I have a better understanding from motivation. So yeah, those are the characters I was revaluing and valuing as I was drawing these. And then I did step back from writing, but I'll talk about more later. But so that's it for now. Thank you for joining in and watching this speed draw and talking about 1940s fashion. Yay! Till next time. Bye. Well, if there is a next time, maybe come back. Thanks for watching.